Hey class, we're going to cover Chapter 4, the Decision Making and Empowerment by Leaders. Again, in these videos, I'm just giving you an overview of things to look for within each of the chapters. But I do want to encourage you guys not to use the videos as a supplement to the book or the PowerPoints to supplement to the book, because there's an awful lot of material that I can't possibly cover in a brief video, and certainly there's not enough in the PowerPoints as well. So, make sure that you are taking time to read the book. I know sometimes it can be quite difficult to do that, particularly when you're on your own, but I'm really encouraging you guys to read through each of the sections of the book so that you get all of the material that you really need, not only to be successful in the course, but more importantly, to be successful as a leader. So one of the things we're going to be talking about in Chapter 4 is decision making, and the empowerment role of that in leaders. We tend to want our leaders to be decision makers, to be people who we call decisive, people who can take that leadership role, make decisions, and help the followers and the leader move forward. And so the book talks a little bit about that, because people do struggle with decision making. And one of the reasons why people struggle with decision making is because oftentimes they're afraid of making a mistake. And so a lot of leaders, a lot of people who are in leadership positions, let me rephrase that, not necessarily leaders, but people in positions of leadership, oftentimes show that they're really not very good leaders because they have trouble making decisions, because they're afraid of making a mistake. And maybe some of you guys fall into that category. And as leaders and future leaders, decision making is just part of being a leader. So the book talks about, decision making by what they call managers, or people who are managing others or in a leadership role. And there's really 4 different things the book talks about. Number 1, emotions and intuition are often involved. Sometimes that can be dangerous, right? Because sometimes our emotions get too involved and we make bad or rash decisions because we're angry or because we're upset or we're afraid. So our emotions can sometimes lead us down bad decisions. Certainly we have some intuition. Some people are more intuitive than others. So you have that, what we call the gut feeling, that sometimes can make a difference in our decision making. Number 2, important decisions can be sometimes disorderly or are very political. So we don't think things sometimes through because we are very anxious and eager, or sometimes we make decisions that are purely political, which oftentimes don't work out for us. Political decisions oftentimes can be bad decisions. Number 3, many decisions are informal and adaptive. So we do know that we make decisions informally. We don't have to go through a formal process for every decision. And sometimes we make decisions to move forward, but we know that we can change things as we go forward, as we gather more data and learn more. And we also know that routine decisions are very different than the more important types of decisions that we make. You make routine decisions every day and don't even really give it a second thought. And we all do that. But we also have important decisions that require, a little bit more of a process. So the book talks about what we call participative leadership. And it really falls into 4 different categories. The one is autocratic decision. So how much do we get other people involved in decision making? Autocratic decisions are made by the leader alone, and we don't really look for input from others. The buck stops with us. We make the decision. The second level of decision procedures is what we call consultation. In that one, leaders will discuss the decision with other people, but ultimately will make that decision for themselves. The third level is what we call joint decisions. That's where leaders and followers discuss and they make final decisions together with equal input and equal responsibilities in the decision. And then the extreme other side of autocratic is what we call delegation. That is the point where the leader is actually not even involved in decision making, but they give the authority and the decision making responsibility to actually the followers, and then they adhere to whatever decision is made by the followers as well. So the book talks a little bit more about the continuum of that. Oftentimes, leaders' decisions will fall somewhere in the middle of that continuum, from an extreme where it's very autocratic to the other extreme where it's very delegation oriented, and it really can fall anywhere within that continuum that you see on your screen. So what are the benefits of having other people involved in some kind of leadership decision making, rather than just doing it ourselves? So number one is the decision quality. The high number of perspectives, getting more people involved in the decision making, will bring in new perspectives, things that maybe you aren't seeing as the leader. We all have blind spots. I do too. And so it's always good to have other people, other eyes involved. That actually adds to the quality of the decision. Number two is it improves decision acceptance when more people are involved in the decision process. So the more that are involved, the more the decisions are adopted and people accept those decisions as well. Number three, satisfaction with the process. So there's more comfort that the decision has been really thoroughly thought through. For you as the leader and for those that were involved in the participation as well in helping to make that decision. And fourth, but certainly not least, is the development of participant skills. So it teaches other people the process related to good decision making as well. So when we have more people that are involved in the process, the skill set of the people that are involved in the process certainly go up as well. So again, we talk about, participative leadership. We're not going to go through every slide in the video, but take a look at these slides, which gives you more information about the participative decision model that we're talking about within the book. The next level of the section talks about the normative decision making as well. So in normative, what is the normal procedure or a specific type of decision procedure that is going to be the most effective? We always say, well, autocratic is bad because, that you're just making the decision, you're not involving anybody. But in some cases, in some scenarios, an autocratic decision is the only really good way or good solution to make a decision. And so it doesn't mean that because it's autocratic that it was automatically bad, or that delegation is always the best. We tend to kind of think that in modern thinking today. We kind of think that people who just are decisive and make a decision and move forward, they're bad people. They're people who are Machiavellian, in their decision making. They just kind of rule with an iron fist. And that's not always the truth. People don't always, decisions are not always best to have delegated to other people or to have a lot of people participating in the decision making. So in the normative decision model, we're actually looking at, and as you look through these slides on your own, it gives you information as to, what of those types of participation levels should I be implementing based on the situation or the scenario in which I'm working in. So again, we look at some of these things again, and that will give you more information as to whether it should be more participative. So A would stand for more autocratic, where C, is definitely going to be more, more communicative, where you're working as a group and making some of these decisions. So it really falls under these continuums as to, where each decision would fall under those 4 levels of participation that we get within our decision making. Page 81, by the way, I put in these, so things in red are things that I've added into the slides. Page 81 will help you find a little bit more closely. So again, what kind of model are we going to use for our decision making really are based on a lot of the situation, a lot of the culture involved in the organization in which you're making those decisions, what your role is within that organization also play into normative decision making. Here again, what are the decision rules related to that? Page 84 will certainly cover some of that as well. So look through these slides and evaluate, what type of decision making you should be using as a leader based on your organization and based on the situation in which you are trying to make a decision based on. What are the guidelines for participative leadership? So if you have people that are involved and you've decided that you want to involve others in the decision making leadership, here are some things for whether it's always feasible in order to have other people involved in decision making. So you have to evaluate how important the decision is. Is the decision really an important decision? The more important the decision, the more participation you want in the decision-making process. Again, for some of the reasons I've already covered, making sure that it's thoroughly evaluated. Number two, identify people with relevant knowledge or expertise. So not everybody should be involved in every decision. It really depends on their abilities, their expertise, and their knowledge. Number three, evaluate the likely cooperation of participants. So how cooperative are they going to be? Or are they forced to be a part of it when they really don't want to? I certainly have served on committees where, quite honestly, didn't really participate that much. Honestly, I shouldn't be on that committee because I'm not that interested in whatever they're working on or the decision in which they're making, and I don't have the time to invest in it. So sometimes even I can be involved in a decision that I really don't really care that much about, and so I don't tend to participate all that much. Number four, evaluate the likely acceptance without participation. So if you're making a decision that you feel everybody's going to be on board with, it's pretty easy, you don't need to involve a lot of people in that decision. Just make the decision. If you need to have people in the organization accept it and there's going to be some pushback on the decision that you're trying to make, then add more participation is certainly more involved. And then number five is really a basic thing of whether it's feasible to even hold a meeting. Sometimes meetings are not feasible, and so you have to kind of look at that and say, is that something that is worth having other people involved in the decision-making process. The book finishes up this chapter talking about, again, more guidelines, how to encourage participation, which is a challenge in the COVID and the Zoom era. How do we get people involved? How to diagnose those making decisions on whether we should have more participation or less participation. And you guys know this, being online and online students, you've been involved in Zoom meetings where, it seems like everybody's a black screen because they don't really want to be involved. And as an instructor, that makes it really difficult for us because we're trying to get you to participate. So these are some things that we try to do to try to get you guys to be more involved in the course as well. So it's a good example of that. Finally, the book talks about, again, the delegation, how you delegate, what types of delegation do you have, and what are involved with delegating. Here's certainly some things as to why managers feel that they should delegate. Again, delegation is a very difficult thing because people sometimes will look at that as dumping rather than delegating. And I've heard people that get delegated something and the manager will walk away, and you guys probably have related to this as well, and they'll say, why don't they just do it? Why are they giving it to me? Why should I be doing their job? So, that's a difficult thing too. So there are definitely things the book talks about in relation to making delegation work well, how to, avoid issues related to delegating, particularly this one, again, delegate tasks that can be done better by the subordinate for sure. Delegates delegate things that are urgent but not necessarily high priority. Tasks that are relevant to the subordinate's career certainly will increase their ability. Don't give just unpleasant tasks, but give good tasks as well. And make sure that it's not central to your role as the manager as well. But I think number 4 is really a big one. We tend to delegate unpleasant tasks versus pleasant tasks. Try to avoid that. That's it for chapter 4. I hope that this helps you kind of clarify a little bit more of what's chapter 4. And we will see you in the chapter 5 lecture. Take care and thanks for tuning in.